When worlds collide across the cosmic web, heroes find themselves in galaxies not their own. The red-masked vigilante stands alone on Coruscant's lowest levels, his enhanced senses overwhelmed by the hum of Imperial patrols and the distant screams of the hunted. In his universe, power came with a choice. But here, under twin suns and watchful eyes, the Force demands more than responsibility. It demands sacrifice. What happens when a hero who fights for the little guy confronts an empire that crushes worlds beneath its boot? A red blur streaked through the neon-hazed undercity of Coruscant, where permanent twilight reigned. The figure moved with impossible grace between massive Durasteel support columns and across gaps that would have meant certain death for any normal being. Peter Parker fired another webline from his wrist and swung in a wide arc through the artificial canyon of the megalopolis. The wind tore at the tattered remains of his iconic suit as he tried to make sense of this strange new reality. 3 standard days had passed since the anomaly appeared in Queens. 3 days since he had been pulled through that crackling tear in space and time while fighting alongside Doctor Strange against a dimensional threat. 3 days in this impossibly vast city planet with its endless spires reaching toward the stars and bottomless depths hiding unimaginable dangers. The air smelled of ozone and industrial waste. The sounds were alien yet familiar, the constant hum of speeders and the distant rumble of massive engines keeping the Ecumenopolis alive. Peter landed silently on a ledge overlooking what appeared to be some kind of market. Beings of countless species haggled and bartered while uniformed soldiers in white armor patrolled with weapons ready. Stormtroopers, they called themselves. The foot soldiers of an empire that ruled the stars with an iron grip. Peter had learned much by watching and listening from the shadows. This was not his Earth. This was not even his universe. He was trapped in a galaxy dominated by a tyrannical regime obsessed with order and control. A galaxy where a mystical energy field called the Force bound all living things together. A galaxy at war with itself. His spider sense flared suddenly, sending electric tingles down his spine. Danger. Close. Peter whirled around just as blaster fire erupted from an alley below. His enhanced hearing picked up the sounds of pursuit and desperate breathing. Someone was running for their life. Without hesitation, Peter plunged into the darkness. Whatever strange cosmic joke had brought him to this place, his core remained unchanged. With great power came great responsibility, and right now someone needed help. The young Padawan Kira Narvin ran as though the darkness itself pursued her. In truth, what followed was far worse. The distinctive whine of an Inquisitor lightsaber spinning at full extension echoed through the tight corridors of the Undercity. The red glow it cast painted the walls like fresh blood. She clutched the small holocron to her chest as her lungs burned for air. Master Cordis had died to ensure this knowledge would not fall into Imperial hands. She would not dishonor that sacrifice. The girl was barely 16 years of age, with short, cropped hair and eyes that had seen too much death for one so young. The small braid that once marked her as a Jedi learner had been shorn away when her master fell, but she could still feel the phantom weight of it against her shoulder. A painful reminder of a life stolen by the Empire. There is nowhere to run, Jedi. The mechanical voice of the seventh sister echoed between the buildings. The Mirialan Inquisitor had been hunting her for weeks, tracking the faint tremors in the Force that Kira could not fully suppress. The Emperor has decreed that your kind must be extinguished. Surrender the holocron, and your death will be quick. Kira turned a corner and found herself facing a solid wall. A dead end, panic, threatened to overwhelm her as she spun, looking for any escape route. The Force offered no solutions, only the cold certainty of approaching death. Found you, little one. The seventh sister stepped into the alley, her circular lightsaber casting her face in demonic red. Behind her, 3 purge troopers advanced with electrostaffs humming with lethal energy. Your journey ends here. Kira reached for her own lightsaber but knew it would make little difference. She was untested, barely trained. Her connection to the Force had always been uncertain, wavering like a candle in the wind. But she would face death as a Jedi with dignity and purpose. I don't think so, lady. The voice came from above, startling both hunter and hunted. A figure dropped from the shadows, landing in a crouch between Kira and her pursuers. The strange being wore red and blue garments with a stylized spider emblem emblazoned across his chest. A mask covered his entire face with large white eyes that somehow conveyed emotion despite their fixed shape. "What manner of creature are you?" The Inquisitor raised her blade, uncertainty flashing across her tattooed features. "Just your friendly neighborhood Spiderman," Peter quipped as he assessed the situation. His spider sense was screaming at the sight of the woman with the laser sword. Every instinct told him she was the most dangerous threat he had ever faced. "Though I gotta say, the neighborhood has gotten a lot bigger lately." The seventh sister laughed, a cold sound devoid of humor. "Another force sensitive, perhaps? It matters not. You will fall with the Jedi." She lunged forward, her lightsaber spinning like a crimson disk of death. Peter reacted on instinct, leaping 20 feet straight up and adhering to the ceiling. The Inquisitor skidded to a halt, surprise evident even beneath her mask. "Whoa there, Darth Maul. Hasn't anyone ever told you running with scissors is dangerous? Not to mention that glorified frisbee you're swinging around." The Purge. Troopers opened fire, their blaster bolts scorching the air where Peter had been a moment before. He twisted in midair, firing webs from both wrists. The sticky substance ensnared two of the troopers, binding their arms to their sides. Peter landed lightly and ducked under a swing from the third trooper's electrostaff. With a quick movement, he grabbed the weapon and pulled, yanking the soldier off balance before delivering a carefully measured punch to the helmeted head. The trooper crumpled unconscious. The seventh sister attacked again, this time with measured precision. Her blade hummed as it cut through the air, missing Peter by millimeters as he contorted his body in ways that seemed to defy anatomy. She reached out with her free hand, and Peter felt an invisible force grab him by the throat, lifting him off the ground. "Interesting. You are not force sensitive, and yet you move like a Jedi Master." The Inquisitor tightened her grip. "Tell me what you are before you die." Peter struggled against the invisible hand crushing his windpipe. His vision began to blur, darkness creeping in at the edges. Then suddenly the pressure vanished. He dropped to his knees, gasping for air as the Inquisitor let out a cry of pain and surprise. Kira stood with her blue lightsaber ignited and in a defensive position. She had struck while the Inquisitor was distracted, scoring a glancing blow across the Mirialan's armor. "Run!" she shouted at Peter. "She will kill us both." The seventh sister turned her attention back to the Padawan, her eyes narrowing behind her mask. Brave but foolish child. Peter saw his opening. Firing a web directly at the Inquisitor's face, he obscured her vision momentarily. In that brief window, he grabbed Kira around the waist and fired another web at a distant ledge. With a powerful pull, they were airborne, soaring away from the alley as the enraged screams of the Inquisitor faded behind them. They traveled in silence for several minutes, swinging through the labyrinthine depths of Coruscant's undercity. Peter changed direction repeatedly, backtracking and crossing his own path to throw off any pursuit. Finally, they reached what appeared to be an abandoned manufacturing plant, its cavernous interior dark and filled with derelict machinery. "I think we lost them," Peter said, setting the girl down gently. "For now, at least." Kira stepped away from him, her lightsaber still ignited, casting a blue glow across her wary features. "Who are you? What are you?" Peter raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Like I said, just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Though I'm starting to think the neighborhood is a few galaxies away from where it should be." He reached up and removed his mask, revealing a young man's face, bruised but smiling. "My name is Peter Parker. I'm from Earth. At least I was until a few days ago." Kira studied him, her blade still raised. "Earth? Is that in the Outer Rim? Try Outer Universe." Peter sighed, running a hand through his well-furse, sweat-damp hair. "Look, I know how crazy this sounds, but I'm from another reality altogether. I was fighting alongside a wizard, a sorcerer named Dr. Strange, when this portal thing appeared, and next thing I know, I'm here in futuristic space city with laser swords and storm guys." "Stormtroopers," Kira corrected automatically. She lowered her lightsaber slightly but kept it ignited. And this is Coruscant, capital of the Galactic Empire. Right. Empire. Bad guys. I figured that much out when they started shooting at everything that moves. Peter gestured to her weapon. So that glowy sword thing. Lightsaber, right? And you're a Jedi? Kira deactivated her blade, finally plunging them into near darkness. Only the ambient light from distant neon signs filtered through the broken windows, illuminating them in shifting colors. I was training to become a Jedi. Now I'm a survivor. The Empire has hunted our kind to near extinction. Those who remain are in hiding, scattered across the galaxy. Why? What did you do to them? Existed. Kira's voice was bitter beyond her years. The Emperor fears our connection to the Force. He fears what we represent: hope, freedom, balance. So he ordered our extermination. Peter sat down heavily on a rusted console, his mind racing to process everything. And that woman with the red lightsaber, an Inquisitor. Once they were Jedi, now they hunt their former brothers and sisters. They serve the Empire and the dark side of the Force. Kira reached into her tattered robes and withdrew a small pyramidal object that glowed with an inner blue light. This is what they truly want. A Jedi holocron containing the locations of Force-sensitive children across the galaxy. My master died protecting it. Peter leaned forward, studying the strange device. So it's like a database? Of kids with special powers? The Force is not simply a power, Spider-Man. It is an energy field that binds the galaxy together. Those who can sense it can learn to manipulate it. The Jedi sought to use this connection to protect and serve. The Sith and now the Empire seek to dominate through it. And these kids would be trained as Jedi? Or killed by the Empire? Kira nodded solemnly. The Emperor would either destroy them or twist them to serve his purposes. Either way, their fate would be sealed in darkness. Peter stood up, suddenly filled with resolve. Then we need to protect them. Get this holocron thing somewhere safe. We? Kira raised an eyebrow. This is not your fight, stranger. You should focus on finding your way back to your Earth. With great power comes great responsibility, Peter said quietly. My uncle taught me that before he died. I have these abilities for a reason. And right now, that reason is standing right in front of me, holding a list of kids who will die if I walk away. He extended his hand. So what do you say? Partners? Kira hesitated, then clasped his hand. Partners, though I suspect we are both doomed. Peter grinned. Wouldn't be the first time someone told me that. Now what's the plan? We need to get off Coruscant. The Empire's grip is strongest here. Kira moved to a shattered window and gazed out at the endless cityscape. There are resistance cells operating in the outer rim worlds. If we can reach them, they might help us protect the children. And how exactly do we get off planet? I don't suppose you have a spaceship tucked away somewhere. Kira smiled for the first time, a flash of youth breaking through her hardened exterior. No, but I know where we might steal one. The Imperial shipyards of Kuat Drive Yards maintained a presence on Coruscant, primarily for the maintenance and repair of military vessels. Security was tight but not impenetrable, especially for a Jedi and a wall crawler with enhanced strength and agility. They observed the facility for a full day, noting patrol patterns and shift changes before attempting entry. Peter had modified his suit using materials scavenged from the abandoned factory. The bright red and blue would have made him an obvious target, so he darkened the colors with industrial dyes, creating a more subdued appearance that would blend into the shadows. Kira had traded her distinctive Jedi robes for nondescript workers' attire, though she kept her lightsaber concealed beneath the rough fabric. Remember the plan, Kira whispered as they crouched on a ledge overlooking the shipyard. We need something small and fast. A shuttle or courier vessel. Peter nodded absently, his attention focused on the perimeter defenses. Security droids patrolled alongside stormtroopers, while automated turrets tracked any movement within their range. His spider sense would help avoid immediate threats, but one wrong move would bring the entire Imperial war machine down upon them. I count 20 guards on the east entrance alone, he muttered. Plus those gun turrets and whatever those floating metal balls are. Probe droids, Kira supplied. They can detect body heat and are equipped with stun weapons. We won't make it 10 steps past the perimeter. Then we don't use the perimeter. Peter pointed upward. The landing platforms are 50 meters up with minimal security. They're expecting threats to come from below or the main entrances, not from above. If I can get us up there, we might stand a chance. Kira considered this. The platforms are used for in-atmosphere testing. The ships there would be fueled and ready for flight. Bingo, Peter grinned behind his mask. Hope you're not afraid of heights, Padawan. This is going to be one wild ride. Before Kira could protest, Peter had scooped her up and fired a web at the highest point he could see. They swung in a wide arc, the wind rushing past them as Kira suppressed a startled cry. Peter fired another web and another, building momentum and altitude with each swing. The shipyard's defensive systems were oriented toward ground and air vehicles, not a single human moving at irregular intervals through the cityscape. Within minutes they had reached the upper platforms of the facility. They landed silently on a maintenance catwalk, overlooking a row of sleek vessels. Imperial shuttles with their distinctive tri-wing design were lined up alongside smaller courier ships designed for speed rather than capacity. There. Kira pointed to a vessel at the far end of the platform. That's a CNR Fleet Systems courier, fast enough to outrun most Imperial pursuits, and small enough that they might not consider it worth chasing. Peter assessed the ship. It was roughly the size of a small bus with a pointed cockpit and swept-back wings. Its hull gleamed dully in the artificial light, unmarked by any Imperial insignia. Looks good to me. Though I should warn you, my piloting experience is limited to flight simulators and one very stressful alien invasion. I can fly it. Kira moved toward the edge of the catwalk. Cover me while I slice the security systems. They descended to the platform, moving from shadow to shadow. Peter's spider sense guided them past security cameras and motion sensors. As they approached the courier ship, Peter felt a familiar tingle at the base of his skull. Wait. He grabbed Kira's arm, pulling her back just as a patrol of stormtroopers rounded the corner. Sector clear. One of the troopers reported into his comlink. Proceeding to maintenance level. They pressed themselves against the hull of a nearby shuttle, holding their breath until the patrol passed. Once the stormtroopers had disappeared down a turbolift, Peter and Kira sprinted to the courier ship. Kira produced a small device from her pocket and attached it to the ship's access panel. Slicer kit, she explained as the device cycled through security codes. Standard equipment for Jedi operating in hostile territory. After a tense minute, the ship's ramp lowered with a soft hiss. They hurried inside Kira, immediately moving to the cockpit, while Peter secured the entrance. The interior was utilitarian, with a small cargo area behind the cockpit containing only essential systems and limited seating. Can you get it started without alerting the whole Empire? Peter asked, watching nervously as Kira's fingers danced across the ship's controls. Bypassing the transponder and security alerts now. Kira flipped several switches and the ship hummed to life. We'll have approximately 30 seconds before the automated systems register an unauthorized launch. That's cutting it pretty close. Would you prefer I leave the transponder active so they can track us across the galaxy? Peter raised his hands in surrender. Point taken. Do your thing, Jedi girl. The engines ignited with a muted roar as Kira guided the ship off the platform. For a moment, it seemed they might escape unnoticed. Then alarms began to wail across the shipyard. Searchlights swept the landing platforms, and defense turrets swiveled toward their position. So much for the stealth approach, Peter braced himself, as Kira accelerated sharply, bringing the ship into a steep climb. Hang on! Kira pushed the throttle to maximum as blaster fire erupted around them. The courier ship shuddered as several shots impacted its shields. Peter watched in amazement as the young Padawan navigated through the dense air traffic of Coruscant, weaving between massive transport ships and soaring past the glittering spires of the upper levels. Despite her youth, her hands were steady, confidence evident in every movement. "Where did you learn to fly like this?" he asked as they narrowly missed a public transport. "My master believed in practical education," Kira replied without taking her eyes off the viewports. She said, "A Jedi who cannot pilot is as limited as a bird that cannot fly." A sad smile touched her lips. "She would have liked you, Spider-Man. You share her irreverent sense of humor." The moment of reflection was shattered as two Imperial TIE fighters screamed past their viewport, weapons charged and ready. The distinctive wail of their twin ion engines sent a chill down Peter's spine. "Friends of yours?" "Imperial starfighters. Faster than us, but less shielded." Kira banked hard, diving toward the planetary surface. "We need to lose them before we can attempt a hyperspace jump." The TIEs pursued, firing green energy bolts that streaked past their hull. Kira rolled the ship, evading most of the shots, but a few connected, rattling the small vessel. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. "Shields at 60%. She called out as she continued evasive maneuvers. Peter strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat, searching the unfamiliar controls for anything that might help. "Does this thing have weapons?" "Minimal point defense lasers. Nothing that would trouble a TIE fighter." Kira pulled the ship into another dive, heading straight for the dense maze of buildings below. "Our best chance is to lose them in the Undercity, then make a break for orbit." They plunged into the shadows of Khan, Coruscant's lower levels, the courier ship's engines screaming in protest as Kira pushed them beyond their design parameters. The TIE fighters followed, matching their descent with mechanical precision. In the confined space of the urban canyons, the Imperial pilots lost their advantage in speed but gained in targeting as the courier's options for evasion narrowed. A series of blasts rocked the ship, sending it into a momentary spin. Kira fought the controls, bringing them level just meters above a major transit way. Speeders scattered in panic, some crashing into nearby buildings as the ship and its pursuers tore through the traffic lanes. "We can't keep this up," Peter shouted over the sound of straining engines and blaring alarms. "We need a new plan!" Kira's face was a mask of concentration. "There's an industrial exhaust port ahead. It leads directly to the upper atmosphere through the planetary cooling systems." "So basically we're going to flush ourselves off the planet?" Peter asked, incredulously. "Unless you have a better idea." Peter glanced at the scanner showing the TIE fighters still in close pursuit. "Exhaust port it is. Lead the way." Kira banked toward a massive circular opening set into the side of an industrial complex. Steam and superheated air billowed from its mouth, creating turbulence that buffeted their small ship. The courier's engines whined in protest as Kira forced it into the narrow tunnel. One of the TIE fighters followed without hesitation. The other pulled up, apparently unwilling to risk the dangerous passage. Inside the exhaust tunnel, the temperature rose rapidly as they ascended through Coruscant's atmospheric regulation system. The ship's cooling system struggled to compensate, warnings flashing across every display. "Hull temperature approaching critical," Peter reported, reading the unfamiliar gauges. "Just a little further." Kira's voice was strained as she fought to keep the ship centered in the tunnel. The pursuing TIE fighter continued to fire its blasts, ricocheting off the tunnel walls in deadly arcs. Peter looked back at the scanner and had an idea. "Keep us steady for 5 seconds. What are you doing?" "Trust me." Peter unbuckled his harness and moved to the ship's small airlock. "I need to even the odds." Before Kira could protest, Peter had cycled the airlock and leapt from the ship. The superheated air burned in his lungs as he fired a web, catching the edge of the courier's hull. Using the ship as an anchor, he swung himself directly into the path of the pursuing TIE fighter. The Imperial pilot had no time to react as Spider-Man landed on his viewport. Through the transparisteel, Peter could see the shock on the man's face as he tried to shake the unexpected obstacle. Peter braced himself against the hull, then punched downward with all his enhanced strength. The viewport cracked, then shattered, exposing the pilot to the superheated atmosphere. Peter fired another web back to the courier ship, pulling himself away just as the TIE fighter spiraled out of control, crashing into the tunnel wall in a spectacular explosion. The shockwave pushed their ship forward, accelerating their ascent. Peter barely managed to reach the airlock before the courier burst from the exhaust port into the upper atmosphere of Coruscant. Kira cycled the airlock as soon as sensors detected Peter's return. He stumbled into the cockpit, his suit smoking and singed in several places, but otherwise intact. "That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I have ever witnessed," Kira said as she plotted a course away from the planet. Peter collapsed into the co-pilot's seat, struggling to catch his breath. "Why not both? Did we lose them?" Kira nodded. The second fighter broke off pursuit. "Planetary defenses are scrambling, but we'll be in hyperspace before they can respond." She pulled a lever and stars streaked around them as the ship jumped to light speed. "You saved us. That was impressive. All in a daze. Work for your friendly neighborhood Spiderman," Peter quipped, though his voice betrayed his exhaustion. "Where are we headed anyway?" "Dantooine." Kira set the autopilot and leaned back in her seat. "An agricultural world in the Outer Rim, remote enough that the Empire maintains minimal presence, yet populated enough that we won't stand out. Sounds like a good place to catch our breath." Peter removed his mask, wincing as the movement pulled at burned skin, "and maybe find a way to contact my own universe. No offense, but I'm not really looking to relocate permanently to a galaxy ruled by space Nazis." Kira studied him thoughtfully. "The Force works in mysterious ways, Spider-Man. Perhaps your arrival here was not an accident, but the will of the Force itself. Yeah, well, the Force and I need to have a serious conversation about consent and proper interdimensional travel protocols." Tried to joke, but fatigue was catching up to him. The adrenaline of their escape was fading, leaving only bone-deep weariness. "Rest," Kira said gently. "We have several hours before we reach Dantooine. I'll watch for any pursuit." Peter wanted to argue that he should take first watch, but his body betrayed him. Within minutes he was asleep, slumped in the co-pilot's chair as the stars streaked past in the ethereal tunnel of hyperspace. Kira watched him for a moment, then turned her attention to the holocron. The small pyramid glowed softly in her hands. Within it lay the futures of countless children whose connection to the Force made them targets of the Empire. She had sworn to protect them, but the task seemed insurmountable for one failed Padawan and a lost hero from another universe. "What would you do, Master?" she whispered to the empty ship. Only the hum of the hyperdrive answered. Peter dreamed of New York, of swinging between skyscrapers, with the familiar skyline spreading below him. He dreamed of Aunt May and MJ and Ned, of a world where the greatest threats were still manageable, where good and evil weren't written across the stars in the language of planets and systems. The dream shifted suddenly. He stood in a vast white space, empty of all features. Before him, a green-skinned, diminutive figure leaned on a gnarled walking stick. Large ears twitched as ancient eyes studied him with unmistakable intelligence. "Lost you are, young one," the strange being said. "Far from home. Who are you?" Peter asked, though somehow he felt he should know. "A guide I am, a teacher, a friend to those who walk in the light." The being hobbled closer, tapping Peter's chest with his stick. "Strong you are, but not in the way of the Force. Different your power is, born of chance and science, yet guided by something greater, My uncle always said that with great power comes great responsibility." Peter found himself explaining. "I try to live up to that. Wisdom in those words there is." The being nodded. "The same truth the Jedi served for 1,000 generations. Power in service to others, not in service to self. The Jedi, like Kira? A Padawan she is. Unfinished her training, alone and afraid." The being's ears drooped slightly. "Help her you can. Help her you must. I'm trying, but I don't understand this world. The Force, the Empire, the dark side. It's all new to me. The darkness is the same in all worlds, young one. Fear, anger, hatred, suffering. These are the weapons of the dark side." The being closed his eyes. "Sense I do that you have faced your own darkness. Overcome it you have time and again." Peter thought of his failures, of Uncle Ben, of Gwen, of all the times he had nearly given in to rage or despair. "Not always. I've made mistakes. terrible ones. As have we all. The being opened his eyes, fixing Peter with a penetrating gaze. But return to the light you did. This is the way of true strength. He turned as if hearing a distant call. Time grows short, Spider-Man. Remember who you are. Remember why you fight. In this may salvation be found for many. The dream dissolved, and Peter woke with a start. The courier ship was still in hyperspace, stars streaming past the viewport in blue-white streaks. Kira sat in meditation, the holocron floating before her, surrounded by a soft glow. "You were talking in your sleep," she said without opening her eyes. "Something about responsibility and power." Peter rubbed his face, trying to hold on to the fragments of the dream. "I saw someone. A little green guy with big ears and a walking stick. He said he was a guide, a teacher." Kira's eyes snapped open, the holocron dropping to her lap. "You saw Master Yoda? You know him? He was the Grand Master of the Jedi Order. One of the wisest and most powerful Jedi who ever lived." Kira leaned forward intently. "What did he say to you?" Peter recounted the dream, watching as Kira's expression shifted from shock to wonder. "The Force showed him to you," she whispered. "It must have. You're not Force-sensitive yet. You received a vision from a Jedi Master." She stood up, pacing the small cockpit. "This changes everything." "Does it? I still don't know how to get home, and we're still being hunted by an entire empire. But now we know we're on the right path. Master Yoda appeared to guide you, which means our mission has the support of the Force itself." Kira's eyes shone with renewed purpose. "We must protect the children on the holocron, and perhaps in doing so, we'll discover why you were brought here." Peter wanted to argue that it was just a dream born of stress and an unfamiliar environment, but something stopped him. The little green man had seemed so real, his words carrying a weight that transcended imagination. And hadn't stranger things happened since he arrived in this galaxy? The ship's console chimed, indicating they were approaching their destination. Kira returned to the pilot's seat, bringing them out of hyperspace with practiced ease. The blue tunnel of hyperspace collapsed around them, revealing a verdant world of greens and blues. "Dantooine," Kira announced. "We should be safe here, at least for a time." The ship descended through wispy clouds, revealing a landscape of rolling plains and scattered settlements. They landed several kilometers from the nearest community, concealing the courier ship in a shallow canyon where rock formations would mask its signature from orbital scans. "We need supplies," Kira said as they disembarked, "and information. The nearest settlement should have both." They hiked across the grassy plains toward a cluster of low buildings visible on the horizon. Peter had modified his costume again, using materials from the ship to create something less conspicuous. The spider emblem remained on his chest, but covered by a spacer's jacket borrowed from the courier's emergency supplies. His web shooters were concealed beneath long sleeves, though never out of reach. Kira had also changed, wearing rough farmer's attire that made her look like any other Outer Rim settler. Her lightsaber remained hidden, a precaution against Imperial sympathizers who might recognize the weapon of a Jedi. The settlement was a trading post serving the surrounding agricultural communities. A handful of moisture farmers and grain harvesters mingled with off-world traders and the occasional mercenary. No Imperial presence was immediately visible, though Peter noted security cameras positioned at strategic locations throughout the marketplace. "Keep your head down," Kira murmured as they entered the busy central plaza. "Even here, the Empire has eyes." They moved from stall to stall, gathering the supplies they would need for the journey ahead. Food, water, power cells, and medical supplies topped their list. Peter let Kira handle the transactions since he still struggled with the galactic currency and trade protocols. While she haggled with a Rhodian merchant over the price of Bacta patches, Peter's attention was drawn to a public HoloNet terminal where a small crowd had gathered. The projected image showed the Imperial Palace on Coruscant. A figure draped in black addressed a massive assembly, his face hidden in the shadows of a deep hood. Even from a distance, Peter could sense the wrongness emanating from the speaker, like a void in reality itself. "The Emperor," Kira had appeared at his side, her purchases complete, addressing the Senate no doubt with more lies and propaganda. The hooded figure's voice carried across the marketplace, cold and commanding. Let it be known that enemies of the Empire will find no quarter, no safe harbor. Even now, Inquisitors track a band of terrorists who have stolen Imperial property. A substantial reward awaits any who provide information leading to their capture. The image shifted, showing a security hologram from Coruscant. Peter recognized himself and Kira fleeing from the seventh sister in the Undercity. The timestamp indicated it was from their first encounter 3 days prior. "That's not good," Peter muttered, as heads began to turn in their direction. Recognition dawned in several eyes as the bounty announcement repeated, "Time to go." Kira grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the terminal. They tried to move casually toward the settlement's edge, but the damage was done. Whispers followed them, accusations and speculations growing louder with each step. "Hey, you!" A burly human in a spacer's outfit stepped into their path. 5 million credits is a lot of money, enough to retire on a nice core world. "We don't want trouble," Peter said, keeping his voice level. "Just passing through." The man laughed, revealing stained teeth. "Trouble found you, boy. Nothing personal, just business." He reached for a blaster holstered at his side. Peter's spider sense flared and he reacted without thinking. A web shot from his wrist, pinning the man's hand to his holster. Before anyone could process what had happened, Peter and Kira were running full sprint toward the edge of the settlement. Shouts erupted. Behind them, as more bounty hunters and opportunists joined the pursuit, blaster fire scorched the ground at their feet as they ducked between buildings. "This way." Kira veered toward a livestock pen where several large reptilian creatures were tethered. With a quick slash of her hidden lightsaber, she cut their restraints. The startled beasts charged in all directions, creating chaos among their pursuers. They ran beyond the settlement's boundaries into the open plains. Their ship was still several kilometers away across exposed terrain. They wouldn't make it on foot before their pursuers organized and overtook them. "I have an idea." Peter scanned the horizon, spotting a ravine about half a kilometer ahead. "Head for that ravine. I'll slow them down." Kira nodded and sprinted toward the natural cover. Peter turned to face their pursuers. At least a dozen beings armed with various weapons were closing fast speeders and swoops, kicking up dust clouds as they approached. Peter fired webs in rapid succession, creating a massive web wall between them and the oncoming threat. The first speeders hit the obstacle at full speed, becoming hopelessly entangled. Others attempted to go around only to find additional webs blocking their path. Satisfied that he had bought them some time, Peter ran after Kira. He found her in the ravine, already working to hotwire an abandoned swoop bike half buried in silt and debris. "Where did you find that?" he asked, skidding to a stop beside her. "Smuggler's cache," she explained without looking up from her work. "This region is known for its hidden routes and forgotten hideouts." The swoop's engine sputtered, then roared to life. "Get on. Your distraction won't hold them for long." Peter climbed onto the swoop behind Kira, wrapping his arms around her waist as she gunned the ancient repulsor lift engine. They shot forward, following the course of the ravine, as shouts and blaster fire erupted behind them. The swoop was fast but unstable banking, dangerously on turns and threatening to throw them with each sudden maneuver. "Can't this thing go any faster?" Peter shouted over the howling engine. "It's already exceeding safe operational parameters." Kira called back as she pushed the throttle to maximum. "We need to lose them before we head back to the ship, or they'll just follow us." Peter glanced back, seeing several pursuers on swoops of their own gaining ground. "Keep going straight. I'll handle them." "What are you planning?" "Something stupid, probably." Peter twisted in his seat, firing webs at the ravine walls on either side. The sticky substance formed a partial blockade at head height, nearly invisible against the rocky background. The lead pursuer hit the web at full speed, clotheslining himself and flipping backward off his swoop. The riderless vehicle careened into the ravine wall, exploding in a fireball that forced the other pursuers to brake or risk the same fate. The momentary chaos gave Peter and Kira the opening they needed. "There." Kira pointed to a fork in the ravine. The left path circles back toward the canyon where we left the ship. They banked hard, nearly scraping the swoop's underside against the ravine floor. The engine whined in protest as Kira pushed it beyond its limits. Behind them, their pursuers had reorganized, continuing the chase with renewed determination. "We're not going to outrun them on this junk heap," Peter shouted. "We don't need to." Kira pointed ahead where the ravine widened, opening onto the plains. "The ship is just beyond that ridge." They burst from the ravine onto open ground, the swoop's engine finally giving out in a shower of sparks. They abandoned the smoking vehicle and ran the remaining distance to the hidden canyon where their ship waited. Blaster fire kicked up dirt around them as their pursuers emerged from the ravine. "Get the ship started," Peter called, pushing Kira ahead. "I'll hold them off." Kira sprinted for the courier ship, while Peter turned to face their pursuers. At least 8 beings of various species were closing fast, weapons drawn and faces set with determination. The bounty on their heads would make any of them wealthy beyond measure, a powerful motivation that overrode caution or mercy. Peter fired webs in a wide spray, creating obstacles and tripping those in the lead. A Trandoshan reptilian hunter with scaled skin broke through, firing a heavy blaster that scorched Peter's shoulder as he dodged. The wound burned like fire, but Peter pushed through the pain, tackling the alien and using his superior strength to hurl him into 2 human hunters approaching from the left. A web to the face blinded a Duros bounty hunter, while a sweeping kick knocked a Nikto off his feet. Peter moved with superhuman speed and agility, his spider sense warning him of threats from all directions. But even with his powers, he was outnumbered and in unfamiliar terrain. A stun net fired from a launcher ensnared him, momentarily limiting his movement. Before he could tear free, a concussion blast from a sonic weapon hit him like a physical blow. Peter staggered, his ears ringing and vision blurring. A second blast brought him to his knees. Through the haze, he saw the courier ship's engines ignite Kira at the controls. Had she abandoned him, left him to the mercy of bounty hunters while she escaped with the holocron? He couldn't blame her. The children's safety had to take priority over one displaced hero from another universe. The ship rose above the canyon walls, then to Peter's surprise, turned and dove straight toward the bounty hunters. Its laser cannons fired precise shots, forcing the hunters to scatter for cover. The ship hovered meters above the ground, its boarding ramp extended. "Spiderman!" Kira's voice came over the external speakers. "Jump!" Summoning his remaining strength, Peter leapt upward, firing a web that caught the edge of the ramp. He pulled himself aboard as blaster fire peppered the ship's hull. The ramp closed behind him, and the courier shot skyward, accelerating towards space. Peter stumbled into the cockpit, collapsing in the co-pilot's seat. "Cutting it a little close, weren't you?" "I had to bypass the security lockouts," Kira replied as she piloted them out of Dantooine's atmosphere. The bounty hunters had already sliced the ship's transponder. If I'd taken off immediately, they would have called Imperial reinforcements and tracked us. Smart thinking. Peter winced as he examined his wounded shoulder. The blaster had seared through his makeshift jacket and the suit beneath, leaving a painful burn. Though a little warning about the plan would have been nice. There wasn't time. Kira spared him a glance. "Besides, you handled yourself well for someone outnumbered 8-1. "Yeah, until that sonic weapon hit me." Peter's ears were still ringing. Reminded me of my last fight with Shocker. Shocker, villain from my world, specialized in vibration weapons. Peter managed a weak smile. "Not nearly as scary as your Inquisitors, though." The ship shuddered as it broke atmosphere. Kira's hands flew across the controls, checking systems and plotting a hyperspace jump. "We need to assume Dantooine is compromised. The Empire will have patrols en route within hours." "So, where to now?" Kira hesitated. "I'm not sure. We need a safe haven somewhere the Empire's reach is limited." She studied the star chart projected above the console. "Perhaps Tatooine? It's controlled by the Hutts, not the Empire. And these Hutts are better." "No. They're crime lords, gangsters who control much of the Outer Rim. But they're not ideologically opposed to Jedi, just practically opposed to anyone who threatens their profits." Kira plotted a course. We might find temporary sanctuary there at least. Before she could engage, the hyperdrive alarms blared throughout the ship. A shadow fell across the viewport as a massive vessel moved into position above them. Its wedge-shaped hull bristled with weapons, turrets, and hangar bays from which small fighters were already launching. "Star Destroyer," Kira whispered, fear evident in her voice. "Imperial Navy." The ship's comm system activated automatically, a stern voice filling the cockpit. "Unidentified vessel, this is the Imperial Star Destroyer Eradicator. You are ordered to power down and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." Peter stared at the massive warship dwarfing their tiny courier. "Please tell me you have a plan B." Kira's face was pale but determined. The holocron cannot fall into Imperial hands. If they capture us, they capture it, and with it the future of the Jedi Order. So, what do we do? "We run." Kira's hands moved across the controls with practiced precision. "Hyperspace calculations are complete. We just need to get out of their tractor beam range." "And how exactly do we do that with a Star Destroyer right on top of us?" A grim smile touched Kira's lips. "We do something unexpected." She pushed the ship into a steep dive, heading directly toward Dantooine's surface. The Star Destroyer's turbolasers opened fire, massive energy bolts streaking past their hull as Kira executed a series of evasive maneuvers. TIE fighters screamed in pursuit, their distinctive wail audible even through the ship's hull. "They're gaining on us," Peter reported, watching the scanner. "I'm counting on it." Kira leveled their descent, skimming the upper atmosphere. "Strap in. This is going to get rough." Peter secured himself as Kira executed a maneuver that seemed physically impossible. She cut the main engines momentarily, allowing the ship to stall, then fired the maneuvering thrusters in sequence. The courier flipped end over end, passing directly between two pursuing TIE fighters. Before the Imperial pilots could react, Kira re-engaged the main drives at full power, shooting them back toward space at a perpendicular angle to their previous course. The unexpected maneuver caught the Star Destroyer's gunnery crews off guard. By the time they recalibrated their targeting solutions, the courier had passed beneath the massive vessel's ventral armor, using the Star Destroyer itself as a shield against its own fighters. "Hold on," Kira called as she pushed the hyperdrive motivator to its limits. Stars stretched into streaks of light, and they were gone, escaping into the safety of hyperspace as Imperial weapons fire dissipated harmlessly in their wake. Peter released his white-knuckled grip on the crash webbing. "That was amazing. Where did you learn to fly like that?" "I told you. My master believed in practical education." Kira leaned back, exhaustion evident on her young face. She was a starfighter pilot during the Clone Wars before becoming a Jedi Knight. "Well, she taught you well." Peter checked the scanners, confirming they had escaped clean. "So Tatooine is our destination?" Kira shook her head. "I entered false coordinates in case they managed to scan our navicomputer. We're actually headed to Takodana." "Never heard of it." "Few have. It's a forested world in the mid-rim. Technically within Imperial space, but practically ignored due to its lack of strategic value." Kira's expression softened slightly. "There's someone there who might help us. A Force sensitive who never joined the Jedi Order, but who has connections throughout the galaxy. Maz Kanata. And you think this Maz will help us protect the children on the holocron?" "Maz has helped Jedi in the past. She's ancient and wise, with a castle that serves as neutral ground for all manner of beings. If anyone can direct us to a true sanctuary, it's her." Peter nodded, accepting the plan. He moved to the ship's small medical bay, searching for supplies to treat his wounded shoulder. The blaster burn throbbed with each movement, a constant reminder of how deadly this galaxy could be. As he applied Bacta, the miraculous healing substance of this universe, Peter found himself thinking of home, of Aunt May who must be frantic with worry, of his friends and the life he had left behind. Was time even passing the same way there? Had Dr. Strange discovered what happened to him? Was anyone looking for a way to bring him back? "We'll find a way to return you home, Spider-Man." Kira stood in the doorway, watching him with those two old eyes in her young face. "I promise." Peter looked up surprised. "How did you know what I was thinking? I didn't need the Force to see it written across your face." She stepped forward, helping him secure the bandage. "You have people waiting for you. People you love." "Yeah," Peter admitted. "I do. But I can't leave until we make sure those kids are safe." "I meant what I said before about responsibility." Kira nodded. "Get some rest. We have 12 hours in hyperspace before we reach Takodana." As she turned to leave, Peter caught her arm. "Hey, that flying back there? Your master would have been proud." Something flickered across Kira's face, a mixture of pain and gratitude. She nodded once, then returned to the cockpit, leaving Peter alone with his thoughts. The journey to Takodana passed without incident, the silence of hyperspace providing a welcome respite from the constant danger they had faced since their first meeting. Peter used the time to repair his suit, scavenging materials from the courier ship's emergency supplies. The iconic red and blue had been compromised, but the essential design remained, incorporating elements that would help him blend into this strange new galaxy while maintaining the identity that defined him. Kira spent most of the journey in meditation, communing with the Force, seeking guidance, or perhaps simply seeking peace. Peter respected her space, understanding the burden she carried. The holocron represented more than information, it represented hope for a tradition on the brink of extinction. They emerged from hyperspace above a world of vibrant blue and green. Takodana was predominantly covered by forests and lakes, a stark contrast to the urban sprawl of Coruscant or the agricultural plains of Dantooine. "It's beautiful," Peter remarked as they began their descent. "One of the galaxy's hidden treasures," Kira agreed. "Mars has protected it for centuries, ensuring it remains untouched by war or industrial exploitation." "Centuries. How old is this Maz?" "Over 1,000 years by some accounts. Her species ages differently than humans." Kira guided the ship toward a clearing near a massive stone structure built on the shore of a pristine lake. "That's her castle, a waypoint for travelers, adventurers, and those seeking to disappear." They landed some distance from the main structure, concealing their ship among the dense foliage. As they approached the castle on foot, Peter marveled at the ancient stonework and colorful banners that adorned its walls. Dozens of spacecraft were parked nearby, ranging from sleek luxury yachts to battered freighters. "Quite the gathering," Peter observed, as they reached the main entrance where beings of countless species came and went. "How do we find Mars in all this?" "We don't. She'll find us." As if on cue, a diminutive orange-skinned figure appeared before them. Barely reaching Peter's waist, she peered up at them through oversized adjustable goggles that magnified her already large eyes. A Jedi Padawan and a being from another reality. Her voice was weathered by age yet strong with wisdom. "The Force works in mysterious ways indeed." Kira bowed respectfully. "Maz Kanata, we seek your counsel." "And sanctuary, no doubt." Maz adjusted her goggles, examining them more closely. "The Empire has placed quite a price on both your heads, higher than usual for a half-trained Padawan." Her gaze shifted to the pouch at Kira's side where the holocron was hidden. "Ah, that explains it. Is it safe to talk here?" Peter asked, glancing around nervously. Maz laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. "My castle has stood for a millennium, young one. Its walls have heard the secrets of the galaxy and kept them well." She gestured for them to follow. "Come, we will speak in private." She led them through the bustling main hall where music played and drinks flowed freely. Smugglers, gamblers, mercenaries, and traders from across the galaxy mingled in a cacophony of languages and cultures. Despite the diversity, Peter noticed no imperial uniforms or obvious sympathizers. They entered a small chamber behind the main hall where Maz gestured for them to sit at a low table. Ancient artifacts and curiosities lined the walls, giving the room the feel of a museum or perhaps a witch's workshop. "Now," Maz settled herself across from them. "Tell me everything." Kira recounted their journey while Peter explained his arrival from another universe. Maz listened without interruption, occasionally adjusting her goggles to examine one or the other more closely. When they finished, she sat in silence for a long moment contemplating. The holocron contains the identities of Force-sensitive children, she finally said. Children the Emperor would corrupt or destroy. And you seek a way to protect them. Yes, Kira confirmed. My master died retrieving this information. I cannot allow her sacrifice to be in vain. Maz turned to Peter. And you? A hero from another world with powers not of the Force yet guided by something similar. The cosmic web, perhaps. She smiled at his surprise. Oh yes, I know of the multiverse, young one. When you have lived as long as I have, you learn that reality is far more complex than most imagine. Can you help us? Peter asked. The Inquisitors are hunting us across the galaxy. We need somewhere safe to take the children somewhere beyond the Empire's reach. Maz closed her eyes briefly. There are few truly safe places left. The Empire's shadow grows longer each day. She opened her eyes again. But there is one possibility. A hidden enclave on the moon of Iktoch. The native Iktochi are Force-sensitive by nature, though few ever joined the Jedi Order. They maintain ancient sanctuaries in their mountain ranges where the Force flows strongly, masking the presence of those who dwell there. Will they help us? Kira asked, hope kindling in her voice. They might if you bring them something of value. The Iktochi are practical despite their mystical nature. Maz tapped her fingers on the table thoughtfully. There is an Imperial research facility on Merca. They have been experimenting with creatures called Ysalamiri, which create bubbles where the Force cannot be sensed. Bubbles where the Force doesn't exist? Kira looked disturbed by the concept. How is that possible? Nature finds balance in all things, child. The Force is powerful but not absolute. Maz leaned forward. The Iktochi would value such creatures. They could use them to further hide their sanctuary from Force sensitives who might search for them, including Inquisitors. So we break into an Imperial facility, steal these Force-blocking lizards, and trade them for sanctuary. Peter summarized. Sounds straightforward enough aside from the breaking into an Imperial facility part. It is not without risk, Maz conceded, but the facility on Merca is research, not military. Security will be present, but not overwhelming. Kira looked uncertain. These creatures that block the Force, I'm not sure we should be helping spread them throughout the galaxy. What if the Empire uses them against the remaining Jedi? They already are, child, Maz said gently. Better the Iktochi have them as protection than the Empire have exclusive access. Besides, the Ysalamiri cannot survive long away from the trees of their homeworld without special nutrient frames. The Empire has developed such technology, but it is complex and difficult to replicate. Peter considered the plan. Assuming we get these Ysalamiri things and the Iktochi agree to help, what then? We can't exactly go around the galaxy collecting Force-sensitive kids without attracting attention. One step at a time, Spiderman. Maz adjusted her goggles again, studying him intensely. The path home will reveal itself when your work here is complete. The Force, or whatever cosmic power governs your universe, brought you here for a purpose. Fulfill that purpose and the way will open. She stood, signaling the end of their meeting. Rest here tonight. My castle is neutral ground, respected even by the Empire's agents. Tomorrow I will provide you with the coordinates for Merca and what intelligence I have on the facility. As she escorted them to guest quarters, Maz paused, looking up at Peter. The eyes are the windows to the soul, they say. Yours have seen much pain, young one, yet retain their light. Hold to that light. In the dark times ahead, it will guide you when all else fails. With those cryptic words, she left them. Peter and Kira were given a small but comfortable room with 2 sleeping pallets and a viewport overlooking the lake. The sun was setting, casting gold and crimson reflections across the water's surface. Do you trust her? Peter asked as they settled in for the night. Kira nodded. Maz is ancient and wise. She has helped the Jedi for centuries while maintaining her independence. If anyone can guide us, it's her. Breaking into an Imperial facility seems risky. Peter lay back on his pallet, staring at the stone ceiling. But I guess we're running out of options. The Force will guide us, Kira said with quiet certainty. The Force, Peter repeated thoughtfully. This mystical energy that binds the galaxy together. You can feel it, right? Manipulate it? Kira hesitated. Yes, but my connection is not as strong as it should be. My master often said I lacked focus, that I allowed emotion to cloud my perception. Where I come from, that's called being human. Peter turned to look at her. Your emotions, your connections to others, they give you strength. The Jedi taught that attachment leads to fear. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to suffering, Kira recited. To truly serve the Force, one must be detached, balanced. Sounds lonely, Peter said softly. Is that why you seem so isolated? So reluctant to connect? Kira was silent for a long moment. When my master died, I felt it through the Force. Not just her death, but her becoming one with it. Her last thought was of me, of her hope that I would survive, that I would carry on. Her voice trembled slightly. How do I honor that without attachment? How do I fulfill her final wish while remaining detached? Maybe you can't. Maybe that's the point. Peter sat up, facing her. Where I come from, great heroes aren't defined by their detachment, but by their connections, by who and what they're willing to fight for, to die for if necessary. And what are you willing to die for, Spider-Man? Peter thought of Aunt May, of MJ, of the countless people he had sworn to protect as a friendly neighborhood hero. Family, friends, innocent people who can't protect themselves, the belief that power comes with responsibility. He smiled slightly. Not so different from your Jedi when you think about it. Kira considered this. Perhaps. The Jedi Order was not perfect. Even my master admitted that. Their destruction may have been as much due to their own rigid beliefs as to the Sith's treachery. Then maybe instead of trying to preserve the old Jedi ways exactly as they were, you should be looking to build something better, something that learns from their mistakes. The idea seemed to take root in Kira's mind. She nodded slowly. Something to consider. For now, though, we should rest. Tomorrow we plan our mission to Merca. As promised, Maz provided them with detailed information on the Imperial Research Facility. Located in a remote region of Merca, the installation was dedicated to biological research, particularly focused on the force-blocking properties of the native Ysalamiri. Security consisted primarily of stormtroopers and automated systems rather than the more dangerous purge troopers or inquisitors who would find their force abilities negated by the very creatures being studied. A perfect opportunity for us, Maz explained as she showed them holographic schematics of the facility. The Ysalamiri create bubbles where the force cannot be sensed or used. This means Inquisitors avoid the facility, making it one of the few Imperial installations where a Jedi might operate without immediate detection. But it also means Kira won't be able to use her abilities while we're there, Peter pointed out. A necessary disadvantage, Kira said, studying the layout. But one that works both ways. If I cannot sense the Force, neither can any Force-sensitive Imperials who might be present. Their plan took shape over the next few hours. They would approach Merca in their courier ship using false credentials provided by Maz. The facility maintained regular supply deliveries from off-world, the perfect cover for their infiltration. Once inside, they would locate the Ysalamiri section, secure several specimens along with their nutrient frames, then extract before security could respond in force. Simple, straightforward, and therefore likely to go horribly wrong, Peter quipped as they finalized the details. But it's the best plan we've got. They departed Takodana the following morning, their ship freshly supplied and bearing new identification transponders courtesy of Maz's extensive connections. The journey to Merca would take approximately 18 hours, giving them time to prepare and rest before the mission. As they traveled through hyperspace, Peter continued to repair and modify his suit. Using materials from the ship and supplies from Maz, he reinforced the damaged sections and adjusted the coloration to a more subdued palette of dark red and blue. The spider emblem remained but simplified to reduce its distinctiveness. "You know, I still don't fully understand how your abilities work," Kira remarked, watching him work. "You mentioned being bitten by some kind of mutated spider." Peter nodded absently as he adjusted his web shooters. "A genetically engineered spider from a research lab. Its bite somehow transferred aspects of its DNA to me. Enhanced strength reflexes, a sort of danger sense I call my spider sense, the ability to stick to walls." He held up his web shooters. "These I made myself. The webs are a synthetic compound I designed based on actual spider silk, but much stronger." "Fascinating." Kira examined one of the devices. "The scientific knowledge required to create such technology is impressive. I've always been good at science. It just comes naturally." Peter shrugged, "Though I'm still trying to wrap my head around how your technology works. Hyperspace, travel lightsabers, artificial gravity. It makes Earth science look primitive by comparison. Yet your powers are unique even by our standards." Kira handed the web shooter back. "In all the Jedi records I've never encountered anything quite like your abilities. They're not force-based, yet they allow you to perform feats that would require force mastery. Just lucky, I guess." Peter reattached the shooter to his wrist. "Or unlucky, depending on how you look at it. These powers have brought me as much tragedy as triumph." "Because of the responsibility they demand?" "Exactly." Peter paused his work, looking at her directly. "When you have the power to help people to save lives but choose not to, the consequences can be devastating. I learned that lesson the hard way." Kira seemed to understand the pain behind his words. "We all have defining moments that shape us. The choices we make in those moments determine who we become." "And who have you become, Kira? A Jedi? A rebel? A guardian?" "I'm still discovering that answer," she admitted. "For so long my identity was bound to the Jedi Order, Padawan of Master Cordis, student of the Force. But with the Order destroyed and my training incomplete, I exist in a state of transition, neither fully Jedi nor something new." "Sometimes being undefined is freedom," Peter suggested. "The chance to decide for yourself who you want to be instead of following someone else's path." Before Kira could respond, the ship's sensors chimed, alerting them that they were approaching Merca. They returned to the cockpit, watching as the swirling tunnel of hyperspace collapsed around them, revealing a green-blue world partially shrouded in clouds. "Engaging approach vector," Kira announced as she guided the ship toward the planet. "Transmitting clearance codes now." They held their breath, waiting for the Imperial response. After what seemed like an eternity, the comm system crackled to life. "Supply vessel Kargan's Fortune, you are cleared for landing at Platform 7, transmitting coordinates now." Kira exhaled, releasing tension she hadn't realized she was holding. "First hurdle cleared. Let's hope the rest goes as smoothly." They descended through Merca's atmosphere, following the provided coordinates to a landing platform adjacent to the research facility. The installation was smaller than Peter had expected, a collection of prefabricated structures arranged around a central hub, with a perimeter fence and guard towers the only obvious security. "Remember the plan," Kira said as they prepared to disembark. "We're delivery contractors bringing specialized equipment from the Felucia outpost. We get in, verify the manifest with security, then find the Wissalamari containment section." Peter nodded, adjusting his disguise one final time. He wore nondescript worker's attire over his suit, with his web shooters concealed beneath long sleeves. A cap and tinted eye shields obscured his features without appearing suspicious. Kira was similarly disguised, though her lightsaber remained hidden within her jacket, ready to be drawn if necessary. They descended the ship's ramp, pushing a hovercart loaded with supply crates provided by Mars. Two stormtroopers waited at the platform entrance, datapads in hand. "Manifest and identification." One demanded, his voice mechanically filtered through his helmet. Kira presented the forged documents with practiced nonchalance. "Specialized equipment from Felucia. Requisition FLC 1138. The stormtrooper scrutinized the information. "This requisition doesn't specify contents." Classified research materials, Peter interjected smoothly. We were told Dr. Naven would verify upon delivery. The name dropped courtesy of Maz's intelligence had the desired effect. The stormtrooper hesitated, then nodded. Proceed to central receiving. Deviation from the designated path will result in immediate security response. They pushed the cart forward, entering the facility through the main cargo doors. Inside the installation hummed with activity, technicians and scientists moving purposefully between labs and workstations. None paid particular attention to what appeared to be routine delivery personnel. Central receiving first, Kira murmured as they followed directional markers. Then we find a way to the containment section. They reached the receiving bay where a bored-looking Imperial officer barely glanced at their manifest before waving them through. So far, the false credentials were holding, but Peter's spider sense remained on high alert. Something felt wrong, though he couldn't pinpoint what exactly. The containment section should be in the east wing. Kira consulted a facility map displayed on a nearby terminal. Restricted access. Leave that to me. Peter nodded toward a passing technician wearing a security badge. As they moved through a narrow corridor, he deliberately bumped into the man, apologizing profusely while his fingers deftly removed the badge. A trick learned from his friend MJ, who had gone through a pickpocketing phase during theater training. Armed with the security badge, they approached the east wing entrance. Peter swiped the badge and the doors slid open, allowing them access to the restricted section. The temperature dropped noticeably as they entered a climate-controlled environment dominated by transparent steel containers housing small tree-like structures. The Ysalamiri, Kira whispered, pointing to furry lizard-like creatures clinging to the branches. They're bound to the trees physiologically. Peter approached one of the containers, examining the setup. These must be the nutrient frames Maz mentioned. They're simulating the conditions of the trees while allowing the creatures to be transported. We need at least 3 complete setups. Kira began scanning the room for portable units. There should be smaller containment modules for field testing. As they searched, Peter noticed something odd. Kira, do you feel that? Or rather not feel it? She paused, realization dawning. The Force. I can't sense it at all. It's like a void around us. The Ysalamiri effect, Peter confirmed. Makes my spider sense feel muffled too. Not gone completely, but dulled. They located a storage area containing portable nutrient frames designed for field deployment. Each unit was self-contained with power supplies and environmental controls sufficient to sustain a Ysalamiri for several weeks. Perfect. Peter began carefully transferring 3 of the creatures to the portable units following the handling protocols displayed on nearby terminals. The lizards made soft, trilling sounds but offered no resistance as they were moved, maintaining their grip on the simulated branches. We need to hurry, Kira urged, checking the corridor outside. Our window of opportunity is closing. With the 3 Ysalamiri secured in portable containers, they reloaded their hover cart and began the journey back to the landing platform. They had nearly reached the main corridor when alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Security breach in Sector 4, a mechanical voice announced over the intercom. All personnel initiate lockdown. Procedures. Peter and Kira exchanged worried glances. Sector 4 was not their location. They were in Sector 2 according to the facility map. Someone else is causing trouble, Peter realized. This might work to our advantage. They increased their pace, pushing the cart toward the exit as security personnel rushed past them, heading toward the disturbance. In the confusion, their presence as delivery workers went unchallenged, the general assumption being that they were evacuating as ordered. They had almost reached the landing platform when a squad of stormtroopers blocked their path. The leader raised his hand, halting their progress. All personnel must report to designated security checkpoints for verification, he stated. No exceptions. We're just trying to secure our delivery. Kira attempted to sound appropriately concerned. Valuable research materials that shouldn't be left unsecured during an alert. The stormtrooper was unmoved. Verification first, then you can secure your cargo. Peter sensed the situation deteriorating. Even with his dulled spider sense, he could tell they were moments away from being discovered. He glanced at Kira, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Without further hesitation, Peter fired webs from both wrists, ensnaring 2 of the stormtroopers, while Kira drew her lightsaber in a single fluid motion. The blue blade hummed to life as she deflected the first blaster shots. Even without her force connection, her training was evident in her movements as she disabled 2 more troopers with precise strikes. Peter leaped over the hover cart, tackling the squad leader and knocking him unconscious with a carefully measured blow. "So much for the stealth approach," he called as more alarms blared announcing their position. "Get the Waisalamiri to the ship," Kira shouted back as she faced the corridor where reinforcements were already approaching. "I'll hold them off." Peter hesitated, unwilling to leave her behind. "Not happening. We leave, together or not at all." He fired impact webs at the oncoming stormtroopers, creating a temporary barrier, then grabbed the hover cart and Kira, pushing them toward the landing platform at a run. Blaster fire erupted around them, scoring hits on the walls and floor as they ran. They burst onto the landing platform to find 2 TIE fighters descending from the sky, responding to the security breach. Their ship sat 30 meters away, engines already warming thanks to the remote startup sequence Peter had triggered during the firefight. "We'll never make it across open ground," Kira shouted over the din of blaster fire and TIE engines. "We don't have to." Peter pointed to a cargo loader operating near the edge of the platform. "Get ready to jump." He fired webs at the loader's controls, yanking hard. The machine responded by swinging its extended arm directly over their position. As it passed overhead, Peter grabbed Kira and the hovercart, firing another web that attached to the loader's arm. With a powerful leap, he pulled them upward, using the machine as a makeshift zipline that carried them over the heads of the confused stormtroopers. They landed near their ship's ramp as the TIE fighters opened fire, strafing the platform. Peter pushed the hovercart up the ramp as Kira provided cover with her lightsaber, deflecting blaster bolts back at their attackers. Once inside, Peter secured the Waisalamiri containers while Kira rushed to the cockpit, firing up the engines and retracting the landing gear before they had fully closed the hatch. The ship lurched upward as she pushed the thrusters beyond recommended power levels. "Hang on," she called as the ship shot away from the platform, narrowly avoiding another strafing run from the TIE fighters. Peter strapped himself in as Kira executed a series of evasive maneuvers. The TIEs pursued, firing continuously as they climbed through Merca's atmosphere. The shields absorbed most of the impacts, but warning lights flashed across the console, indicating they wouldn't hold indefinitely. "Can we outrun them?" Peter asked, checking the rear scanners. "Not in atmosphere." Kira's face was set in concentration. "We need to reach space for a hyperspace jump, but they'll disable us before we get there at this rate." Peter studied the tactical display, noticing a dense forest area ahead. "What about those woods? The trees might give us cover. Worth a try." Kira banked sharply, heading toward the forest canopy. The TIE fighters followed, matching her descent. As they skimmed over the treetops, Kira dropped the ship lower and lower until branches scraped the hull. The TIEs were forced to maintain a higher altitude, their targeting compromised by the dense vegetation. "It's working!" Peter exulted as the enemy fire became more sporadic and less accurate. "Temporarily," Kira replied grimly, "but we can't reach orbit through the forest." Peter scanned the terrain ahead, spotting a narrow canyon cutting through the forest. "There. That ravine might provide cover while still letting us climb." Kira nodded, adjusting their course. She pushed the ship into the canyon, its walls rising around them, providing protection from the TIE fighters, which were now forced to fly above the ravine, firing down at an increasingly difficult angle. The canyon began to widen as it approached a range of low mountains. Kira saw her opportunity and took it, driving the ship upward in a near-vertical climb. The sudden maneuver caught their pursuers off guard, giving them precious seconds of advantage. "Preparing for hyperspace jump," Kira announced as they broke atmosphere. "Coordinates locked for the Iktoch system." The TIE fighters recovered quickly, resuming their pursuit, but it was too late. The stars stretched into starlines and they vanished into hyperspace, leaving Merca and its Imperial forces behind. Peter slumped in his seat, the adrenaline of their escape fading. That was too close. Agreed. Kira ran a system diagnostic checking for damage. Shields at 30%, minor hull damage but nothing critical. The Ysalamiri. Peter checked the containers, relieved to find all three creatures alive and secure in their nutrient frames. They're fine, probably wondering what all the excitement was about. Good. Kira set the autopilot and leaned back. We should reach Iktoch in approximately 10 hours. Enough time to rest and prepare for negotiations with the Iktochi. Peter moved to the cargo area where the Ysalamiri were stored. The creatures watched him with large, unblinking eyes, their furry bodies rising and falling with each breath. Despite their simple appearance, these beings had the power to negate the Force itself, a concept that still amazed him. Hard to believe something so small could be so important. Kira had followed him, her lightsaber once again concealed within her jacket. It's always the little things that make the biggest difference, Peter replied, thinking of the microscopic spider that had changed his mind. Entire life. One small factor that alters everything. Kira studied the creatures thoughtfully. When we first encountered them, my connection to the Force vanished. It was like losing a sense, like suddenly going blind after a lifetime of sight. She shuddered slightly. I've never experienced anything like it. Was it painful? Not physically, but spiritually it was disorienting. The Force has always been there, a constant companion, even when I struggled to connect with it properly. Kira reached out tentatively toward one of the containers, then pulled her hand back. These creatures create voids in the Force. The Emperor would find them invaluable for hunting down remaining Jedi. All the more reason to keep them out of Imperial hands, Peter said, and to get them to the Iktochi who can use them to protect the children. Kira nodded, though uncertainty remained in her expression. I wonder what my master would think of this plan. Using creatures that negate the very power we seek to preserve in these children. Sometimes protection requires paradox, Peter offered. These kids need safety first before they can explore their connection to the Force. The Ysalamiri provide that safety by making them undetectable. Perhaps you're right. Kira managed a small smile. For someone from another universe, you seem to understand our situation rather well. Good and evil, power and responsibility, they're not so different no matter what universe you're in. Peter returned her smile. Now get some rest. I'll take first watch. The journey to Iktoch passed without incident. They emerged from hyperspace above a dusty moon orbiting a gas giant. The surface appeared barren, with mountain ranges and deep canyons carved by relentless winds that scoured the landscape. Not exactly a garden spot, is it? Peter remarked as they began their descent. The harsh environment is part of what has kept it safe from Imperial interest, Kira explained. The native Iktochi have adapted to the constant winds and sparse resources. Their settlements are built into the mountains themselves, protected from the elements. They followed coordinates provided by Maz, directing them to a narrow valley between towering peaks. As they approached, what appeared to be solid rock face shimmered, revealing a hidden hangar bay carved into the mountain itself. Holographic camouflage. Peter observed, impressed despite himself. Advanced technology for a supposedly primitive world. The Iktochi have always been selective about what innovations they adopt. Kira guided the ship into the concealed hangar. Their natural precognitive abilities make them wary of outsiders and technological dependence. As the ship settled onto the landing pad, the holographic entrance solidified behind them, concealing their presence from any watching eyes. A group of figures approached, tall beings with downturned horns protruding from the sides of their heads and skin ranging from deep red to pale orange. The Iktochi, Kira whispered. Remember, let me do the talking. They disembarked Peter, pushing the hover cart containing the Ysalamiri containers. The tallest of the Iktochi stepped forward, regarding them with eyes that seemed to see beyond the physical realm. We have foreseen your arrival, Jedi Padawan. His voice was deep and resonant. And you, Spiderman, displaced hero of another reality. Peter couldn't hide his surprise. You know who we are? The Iktochi possess limited precognition, Kira explained. They can glimpse possible futures, especially those directly connected to them. The Iktochi leader nodded. I am Torlin, guardian of the sanctuary. You bring us the Voidmaker's creatures that blind even our sight." He gestured toward the Waisalamiri. "A valuable gift indeed." "We seek protection," Kira stated formally. "Not for ourselves, but for Force-sensitive children hunted by the Empire. We possess a holocron containing their identities and locations." Torlin studied her for a long moment. "Show me this holocron." Kira produced the small pyramid from within her jacket. It glowed softly in her palm, illuminating the solemn faces around them. Torlin extended his hand and Kira placed the holocron in it, watching nervously as he examined the ancient device. "The future of the Jedi," he murmured. "Or perhaps something new, something beyond what the Jedi were." His eyes lifted to Kira's face. "You question the old ways, young one. This is good." The Jedi Order became rigid in its final years, lost in its own certainty. "Will you help us?" Kira asked directly. "These children need sanctuary training protection, and you offer these Voidmakers in exchange." Torlin handed the holocron back. "A fair trade. The Ysalamiri will help us conceal our sanctuary from Force detection, making it safer for all who dwell here." He turned to Peter. "And what do you seek, displaced one?" "A way home eventually," Peter answered honestly. "But not before these kids are safe. Where I come from, we have a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. I can't walk away from that responsibility, even in another universe." Torlin's expression softened slightly. "Wisdom from beyond the stars." He gestured for them to follow. "Come, we will show you our sanctuary and discuss how best to retrieve these children." They were led through stone corridors that wound deep into the mountain. The air grew warmer as they descended, the constant howl of Iktoch's surface winds fading to a distant murmur. Eventually they emerged into a vast cavern illuminated by bioluminescent plants that cast everything in a soft blue-green light. The cavern had been transformed into a self-contained community. Terraced gardens grew food under artificial light, while living quarters had been carved into the walls. In the center, a crystal-clear pool fed by an underground spring provided water. Most surprising were the children, perhaps 24 of them, ranging from toddlers to teenagers of various species, all engaged in what appeared to be structured play and learning activities. "You already have Force-sensitive children here," Kira realized. "We have protected those we could find for generations," Torlin confirmed, "since long before the Empire's rise. The Iktochi have always recognized the importance of those touched by the Force, even when we chose not to join the Jedi Order ourselves." "This is amazing." Peter watched as 2 young Twi'lek children practiced moving small stones with the Force, while a teenage human boy demonstrated levitation techniques. A complete community hidden away from the Empire. Not merely hidden, but protected. Torlin guided them toward a chamber branching off from the main cavern. Inside, a group of adult Iktochi sat in meditation around a central crystal formation that pulsed with inner light. Our elders maintain shields within the Force itself, diverting attention and masking our presence from those who would do us harm. Force concealment. Well, Kira breathed. "I've read of such techniques but never witnessed them in practice. The Waisalamiri you bring will strengthen these defenses, creating areas where even the most powerful Force user would detect nothing." Torlin gestured to technicians who began transferring the creatures to permanent habitats, integrated into the sanctuary's structure. Over the next several hours, they discussed logistics. The holocron contained information on over 50 Force-sensitive children scattered across the galaxy. Retrieving them all would require careful planning, especially with the Empire actively hunting Jedi and their potential recruits. "We cannot extract them all at once," Torlin stated as they studied a star map in the sanctuary's planning chamber. "The risk of drawing attention would be too great. We prioritize," Kira suggested. "Begin with those in most immediate danger, particularly those on Imperial-controlled worlds." Peter studied the distribution of identified children. "We could create extraction routes combining multiple rescues in nearby systems to minimize hyperspace jumps and exposure." Torlin nodded approvingly. "A sound strategy. Our people have ships and operatives experienced in covert movement through Imperial space. Combined with your skills and knowledge, we can begin extractions within days. And what about Spider-Man's return to his own universe? Kira asked the question Peter himself had been considering. Is that something your people can assist with? The Iktochi leader turned his gaze to Peter. The barriers between realities are not easily breached, even with the Force as our ally. However, our records speak of places where the veil is thinner, where one reality bleeds into another. He indicated a point on the star map. There is a vergence in the Force on the planet Lothal. Ancient temples built by a long-vanished civilization that understood pathways between worlds. Lothal. Kira frowned. That's a fully Imperial-controlled planet with a major garrison. Yes, Torlin agreed, which makes exploration of this possibility challenging at present. Perhaps after our more immediate concerns are addressed, we can investigate further. Peter accepted this with a nod. The kids come first. My ticket home can wait. The following days passed in a blur of activity. Peter and Kira worked alongside the Iktochi, planning extraction operations and preparing the sanctuary for new arrivals. The first mission would target 3 children on Outer Rim worlds, where Imperial presence was minimal, reducing the risk while they refined their techniques. On the eve of the first mission, Peter stood alone on a small observation platform carved into the mountainside. A specially designed airlock and transparent barrier protected him from the constant winds while allowing him to see the stars overhead. Somewhere out there was his home, his universe, his loved ones. The distance felt both infinite and somehow trivial, as if everything that mattered existed in a space between heartbeats. Contemplating the cosmos, Kira joined him on the platform, her approach silent enough that he would not have noticed without his spider sense. Just thinking about home, Peter admitted, and about everything that's happened since I arrived here. Do you regret it, being pulled into our struggle? Peter considered the question. No. As weird as it sounds, I think I was meant to be here. To help you, to help these kids. He gestured toward the sanctuary below. In my world, I'm just one hero among many. Here I can make a real difference. You already have. Kira moved to stand beside him. Without you, the holocron would have fallen into Imperial hands. The children would have been lost. It was a team effort. Peter smiled. Speaking of which, are you ready for tomorrow? First, real rescue mission. Kira nodded, her expression serious. The extraction team is prepared. We leave at dawn. She hesitated, then added, I've been authorized to lead the operation. That's great. Peter's enthusiasm faded when he saw her uncertain expression. Isn't it? It's a significant responsibility. If I fail, children could die or worse, be captured and turned to the dark side. Kira's hands tightened on the railing. I'm not a full Jedi. My training was incomplete. Maybe that's an advantage, Peter suggested. You're not bound by the same rigid thinking that led the Jedi Order to miss the threat of the Emperor until it was too late. Perhaps. Kira did not sound convinced. Hey. Peter turned to face her directly. You've survived when most Jedi didn't. You protected the holocron, escaped Coruscant, outflew Imperial starfighters, and helped create this sanctuary. If that doesn't qualify you to lead this mission, I don't know what would. A small smile touched her lips. When you put it that way, I sound almost competent. More than competent. Exceptional. Peter placed a hand on her shoulder. The Force didn't guide you this far just to let you fail now, and neither will I. You're coming on the mission. Try to stop me. Peter grinned. Someone's got to watch your back, and I'm uniquely qualified. Besides, those are kids out there. Protecting them is kind of my specialty. Kira's smile widened. Thank you, Peter. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars until Kira spoke again, her voice thoughtful. What if you could stay? Make a difference here permanently? The question caught Peter by surprise. I don't know. I have responsibilities back home, people who need me. As you have here, Kira observed. It seems the multiverse has placed you in an impossible position. Story of my life. Peter laughed, though there was little humor in it. Always torn between competing responsibilities. He sighed. But I can't think about that now. One mission at a time, right? Indeed. Kira straightened her shoulders. We should rest. Dawn comes early on, Iktoch. As they turned to leave, Peter felt a strange ripple pass through, but his spider sense like an echo from very far away. He paused, looking back at the stars, wondering if somewhere across the void, Dr. Strange was searching for him, trying to bring him home. The feeling passed quickly, leaving only questions without answers. The extraction ship departed at dawn as planned. Sleek and fast with advanced stealth systems, it was ideally suited for covert operations in Imperial space. Peter had modified his suit once more, creating a fully masked version that would conceal his identity completely. Kira wore nondescript clothing that would draw no attention, with her lightsaber hidden but accessible. Their first destination was the agricultural world of Eriadus, a planet in the Outer Rim known primarily for its grain production. According to the holocron, a 6-year-old human boy named Taran lived there with his aunt and uncle, unaware of his force sensitivity. Our approach will be direct but low profile, Kira explained as they prepared to land. We pose as representatives of an educational institution offering scholarships to gifted children. And if the family refuses? Peter asked. We cannot and will not force them. Torlin, who was accompanying them on this first mission, stated firmly, but we will ensure they understand the danger. The Empire has begun identifying force-sensitive children through mandatory school testing. It is only a matter of time before they find him. They landed in a small spaceport several kilometers from the boy's home. Ground transportation had been arranged, a nondescript speeder that would attract no unwanted attention. As they approached the homestead, a modest dwelling surrounded by fields of golden grain, Peter felt his spider sense tingle faintly. Something's wrong, he said sharply. I can feel it. Kira closed her eyes, reaching out with her senses. Imperial presence. Recent, but not current. They've been here. They approached cautiously, parking the speeder a short distance away and proceeding on foot. The house appeared undamaged but unnaturally silent. No movement could be seen through the windows, no sound of activity reached their ears. Stay alert, Torlin advised as they reached the front entrance. If Imperials have already identified the boy, they may have left surveillance. Peter moved to the door, knocking firmly. No response came from within. He tried the handle and found it unlocked. The door swung open, revealing a home that had been abandoned in haste. Food remained on the table, partially eaten. Clothing was scattered as if packed quickly and incompletely. They fled, Kira observed, examining the scene. Recently, within the last day, perhaps. But where to? Peter moved through the house, searching for any clue. In what appeared to be a child's bedroom, he found a datapad partially hidden beneath the bed. Look at this. The others gathered around as Peter activated the device. A recorded message played showing a weathered man with kind eyes. If you're viewing this, you're the ones Mira dreamed about. The man spoke urgently. Imperial officers came yesterday asking questions about Taran, about his school performance and reflexes. We've seen the reports of children taken never to return. We couldn't let that happen to our boy. The man glanced over his shoulder, as if fearing discovery. We're heading to the southern caves. If you truly come to help, find us there. If you're Imperial, his expression hardened, you'll find nothing but regret. The recording ended, leaving them in silence. The southern caves. Torlin consulted a regional map. A network of limestone formations approximately 20 kilometers from here. Difficult terrain, minimal Imperial presence. A good place to hide, Peter agreed, but also difficult to escape from if cornered. Kira headed for the door. If the family left a trail, the Imperials won't be far behind. They returned to their speeder and set course for the southern region of the settlement. As they traveled, Peter observed Imperial patrol ships in the distance performing grid search patterns. The hunt was already underway. The caves were located in a rugged area where the cultivated fields gave way to wild terrain. Ancient limestone formations rose from the ground, creating a maze-like landscape of natural pillars and hidden entrances. They abandoned the speeder at the perimeter, proceeding on foot to avoid detection. "I can sense them," Kira whispered as they picked their way through the stone labyrinth. Fear, anxiety, determination. They're close. Peter scaled one of the taller formations using his wall-crawling ability to gain a better vantage point. From his elevated position, he spotted Imperial scout troopers with speeder bikes establishing a perimeter around the cave system. "They're boxing them in," he reported upon returning. "Standard search pattern with teams converging from multiple directions. They'll have them within the hour." "Then we must act now." Torlin's expression was grave. A direct confrontation would endanger the child, but we cannot allow his capture. "I have an idea." Peter outlined his plan quickly. "Kira and I will create a diversion, drawing Imperial forces away from the eastern section. Torlin, you locate the family and lead them to the extraction point. We'll regroup there once they're secure." Without waiting for objections, Peter climbed back up the rock formation and began moving toward the Imperial perimeter. Kira followed, using the natural cover to remain hidden. When they reached position approximately half a kilometer from the family's suspected location, Peter fired his web shooters at 2 scout troopers who were patrolling the perimeter. The webs ensnared their helmets, blocking their vision and causing them to crash their speeder bikes into the rocky terrain. The commotion had the desired effect. Imperial forces began converging on their position, believing they had located their quarry. Peter and Kira led them on a chase through the stone maze, using their respective abilities to stay just ahead of capture while drawing more and more troopers away from the eastern caves. "This is working a little too well," Peter called as blaster fire erupted around them. He leapt between stone pillars, dodging energy bolts with the help of his spider sense. Kira deflected several shots with her now ignited lightsaber, the blue blade humming as it moved in precise arcs. "We need to maintain their interest for at least 10 more minutes. Torlin needs time to reach the family." They continued their fighting retreat, leading the Imperials through increasingly difficult terrain. Peter used his webs to create obstacles and traps, while Kira employed force pushes to dislodge loose rocks, creating additional barriers. The Imperial forces grew more frustrated and aggressive, their coordination breaking down as the pursuit extended. Finally, the comm device on Kira's wrist chimed twice, their signal that Torlin had secured the family. They began moving toward the extraction point, fighting their way through scattered Imperial resistance. As they approached the rendezvous location, Peter's spider sense flared, warning of immediate danger. "Down!" He tackled Kira, pushing her behind a boulder just as a precision shot from a sniper rifle scorched the air where she had been standing. "Sniper on the high ridge." Kira peered around the cover, spotting the distant figure in specialized armor. "Too far for effective lightsaber defense. I'll handle it." Peter fired a web line at a nearby formation and swung in a wide arc, approaching the sniper from an unexpected angle. The Imperial barely had time to adjust his aim before Spiderman landed directly in front of him. A quick series of movements disarmed the sniper and left him webbed securely to the rocky surface. Peter rejoined Kira, and together they reached the extraction point, a small clearing between limestone formations, where Torlin waited with a man, woman, and small boy Peter recognized from the recording. The boy Taran stared at them with wide eyes, his fear mixed with curiosity. "Are you Jedi?" he asked, staring particularly at Kira's deactivated but still visible lightsaber. "Something like that, kid," Peter answered with a gentle tone. "We're here to help you and your family find somewhere safe." The boy's uncle stepped forward. "The Empire they're looking for Taran specifically, aren't they? Because of the things he can do?" Kira nodded solemnly. "Yes. Your nephew has a special connection to the Force. The Empire would take him for their own purposes. We've heard rumors." "The woman," Taran's aunt said. "Children taken to Imperial facilities never seen again. We couldn't let that happen to him." "And it won't," Torlin assured them. We offer Sanctuary a place where Terran can be safe and learn to understand his abilities. A community of others like him. The family exchanged glances, communicating silently in the way of those who know each other deeply. Finally, the uncle nodded. "We'll come with you. We've already lost our home, our livelihood. We won't lose our boy too." With the decision made, they moved quickly toward the extraction vessel hidden in a ravine beyond the cave system. Imperial forces were still searching the wrong area, but it would not take long for them to regroup and expand their search pattern. They reached the ship without further incident, lifting off under the cover of a sudden storm that had rolled in from the east. As they broke atmosphere and prepared for the jump to hyperspace, Peter watched the young boy Taran staring in wonder at the stars. The child's future had been saved from Imperial clutches, his potential preserved for a better purpose than serving darkness. "One down, two to go for this mission," Kira said softly, joining Peter by the viewport. "And dozens more after that. One step at a time," Peter replied. "But it's a good start." The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward their next extraction, a Rhodian child on the moon of Nar Shaddaa. Peter settled in for the journey, his mind already planning for the challenges ahead. He had found his purpose in this strange new galaxy, a responsibility that transcended universal boundaries. Whatever path led home would reveal itself in time. Until then, he would continue the work that had found him here, protecting the innocent, ensuring the future remained bright with possibility rather than darkened by Imperial control. In the days that followed, Peter and Kira led multiple successful extraction missions, bringing Force-sensitive children and often their families to the Sanctuary on Iktoch. Each rescue strengthened their resolve and refined their techniques. The Sanctuary grew, expanding to accommodate the new arrivals, as the collection of Ysalamiri, strategically positioned throughout the complex, protected them from Force detection. Peter found himself settling into a routine, training the older children in combat techniques that didn't rely on the Force. "You can't always count on your connection to the Force," he would tell them. "Sometimes you need to rely on your physical abilities, your instincts, your ingenuity." Kira, meanwhile, had begun developing a new training program, one that incorporated Jedi wisdom but avoided the rigidity that had contributed to their downfall. She encouraged emotional connections while teaching control rather than suppression. She spoke of balance as a dynamic state rather than a static condition. "The Force doesn't just flow through us," she explained to her attentive students. "It flows between us. Our connections to each other strengthen our individual connections to the Force." Peter often watched these sessions, thinking how different this approach was from what Kira had described of traditional Jedi teaching. She was creating something new, something that might one day replace what had been lost. He felt proud to witness this evolution, even as part of him continued to look toward the stars, wondering about his own path home. The answer came unexpectedly during their 9th extraction mission. They had successfully retrieved a Twi'lek girl from an Imperial processing center on Ryloth and were preparing for hyperspace when their ship's sensors detected an unusual energy signature emanating from a nearby asteroid field. "What is that?" Peter asked as they adjusted course to investigate. Kira studied the readings, her expression growing increasingly astonished. "It's a vergence in the Force similar to what Torlin described on Lothal, but much stronger, much more volatile." As they approached the source, the ship's instruments began to malfunction. Chronometers ran backwards or accelerated wildly. Navigation systems showed impossible coordinates. Through the viewport, the very stars seemed to shift and blur, as if reality itself was becoming unstable. At the center of the disturbance floated what appeared to be a tear in space itself, a crackling portal of energy that pulsed with colors Peter had no names for. The sight triggered an immediate recognition. "It's like the anomaly that brought me here," he breathed, moving closer to the viewport. "Almost identical." Kira's hand touched his arm. "The Force has provided your way home, Peter." Her voice was soft, tinged with both happiness and sorrow, just as Torlin predicted. Peter stared at the portal, feeling the pull of it even through the ship's hull. Home lay beyond that shimmering barrier. Aunt May, MJ, his friends, his world. Everything he had left behind when he was torn from his reality. Yet turning back also meant leaving behind all he had built here. The children he had helped rescue, the sanctuary he had helped establish. Kira, I can't just leave. He turned to her. There's still so much to do. Children to save, the Empire to fight. Kira smiled, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Your arrival here was no accident, Spider-Man. The Force brought you when we needed you most, when I needed you. You've helped us create something that will endure long after you return home. A new beginning for those with Force sensitivity. A sanctuary that will one day become a school, a training ground for a new generation uncorrupted by the mistakes of the past. And you'll continue without me? I will. Kira's voice strengthened with conviction. You've shown me that I don't need to be bound by old traditions, that I can forge my own path guided by the core truths that remain valid. Protection, compassion, balance. These transcend the specific teachings of the Jedi or any order. Peter looked back at the portal, which seemed to be fluctuating, growing unstable. I don't think it will remain open for long. Then you must decide quickly, Kira said. But know this, wherever you go, whatever you choose, you have made a difference here. The children we've saved, the future we've preserved, these are your legacy in this galaxy. Peter took a deep breath, reaching a decision. Take me closer, to the portal. I need to be sure it leads where I think it does. Kira nodded and guided the ship carefully nearer to the anomaly. As they approached, Peter could see flashes of familiar skylines through the crackling energy. New York. Home. That's it, he confirmed. That's my way back. They docked the ship near an abandoned mining platform that floated at the edge of the asteroid field. From there, Peter could reach the portal with a series of carefully calculated web swings. He changed into his original suit, now repaired, and restored a symbolic return to his true identity as he prepared to cross between worlds. On the platform, he faced Kira for what they both knew would be the final time. She had changed so much from the frightened Padawan he had first encountered. Now she stood tall, confident, a leader in her own right. I don't know how to say goodbye, Peter admitted, especially to someone who saved my life repeatedly. Then don't. Kira stepped forward, embracing him briefly. Instead, remember what we've accomplished together and carry that knowledge with you. In your universe, the Force may have a different name or nature, but the truth behind it remains the same. All things are connected across time and space. Peter nodded. And responsibility transcends universal boundaries. Exactly. Kira stepped back. Now go. The portal is weakening. And Spider-Man? Yes? A smile pure and bright. May the Force be with you. With those words ringing in his ears, Peter turned and leapt from the platform, firing web lines that carried him through the asteroid field toward the pulsing portal. As he made the final swing, he looked back, seeing Kira's silhouette against the stars, a guardian of a new hope in a galaxy far, far away. Then he was through the portal, tumbling through crackling energy that seemed to tear him apart and reconstruct him molecule by molecule. There was a moment of absolute nowhere, a space between realities where past, present, and future existed simultaneously. He emerged in the skies above New York, buildings rushing up to meet him as gravity reclaimed its hold. Instinctively, he fired a web, catching the side of a familiar skyscraper and swinging in a wide arc that carried him through the concrete canyons of home. Below him, the city pulsed with life, untouched by galactic empires or ancient prophecies, just the everyday struggles and triumphs of ordinary people. His responsibility once more. As Peter swung between buildings, heading toward the apartment where Aunt May would be waiting, he felt the weight of two worlds upon his shoulders. He had returned, but he had also left part of himself behind. In a galaxy far, far away, children with special gifts were growing, learning, protected by the sanctuary he had helped create. A new order was taking shape, guided by a young woman who had found her own path between light and dark. Spider-Man landed on a rooftop overlooking the city, his city. The sun was setting, painting the skyline in shades of gold and crimson, reminiscent of twin suns on distant worlds. For a moment he thought he felt a ripple in reality, a connection across the vast gulf between universes. Then it was gone, leaving only memory and purpose. With renewed dedication, Peter Parker adjusted his mask and leapt from the rooftop, swinging toward whatever responsibility awaited him next. The friendly neighborhood Spider-Man was home, but forever changed by his journey among the stars.